connection, misdirection sets the stage to turn the page. At the raising of the curtain, I am hurting and uncertain of the parts we have played. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again? Fading out of the close-up, everybody's reeling, no concealing. Your beauty is seed stealing. Violins are singing, sunset's waiting, radiating. Your entrance is breathtaking. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again?
Hello, everybody. Drew here from Four Wall Entertainment. Welcome to episode 42 of the Four Wall Sunday Roundtable, the last episode in April. Can't believe that went by so fast. I am joined once again by my co-host, Jeff Krieger.
Hey, Drew.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm great. 42 and almost a year. We're like close to a year doing this, if you can believe that.
Yeah, coming quick.
And here we are. How was your weekend?
It was good. Just kind of stayed at the house. I ordered the UFC fights, which was the first their first full capacity event in over a year.
Wow!
And it was actually incredible to see. I watched when they did well. When we first started doing this show, I think I mentioned that I watched like the virtual racing. I watched like bubble basketball and stuff, and it just never really was the same because without fans, it just doesn't work. Last night's fights it was incredible to see. The fans were totally locked in on everything. So every punch or whatever you want to say, but it was completely different atmosphere. And I can't wait to see that for theater, for festivals, for concerts. I really feel when everybody can come back into full capacity, it's going to be something special.
Yeah. Where was it? Where'd they do it?
It was in Florida, of course.
Okay.
But
hey, that's great. Listen,
yeah,
glad someone's doing it. And
yep.
Happy people actually showed up. I'm not surprised, I guess. That seems like the crowd. That's amazing. I'm glad that people were able to enjoy themselves, and it's only a matter of time before we're all in the same situation.
For sure.
And light humor, before we get going, we released our second episode of our cartoon Light Humor a few days ago. And thank you to everyone involved. Enormous thank you and shout out to Corey Paddock and Skylar Smith, writer and animator, respectively. They put so much work into this, and I hope they're proud of it. And they had to listen to my notes over and over again. So thank you for that. And to our cast.
Yeah, our cast was great this episode. Lindsay Nicole Chambers, Jorge Arroyo, John Anselmo, Ebony Madry, Oscar Del Aguila, and Brian McDevitt. thank you for your voice work. It came out great, and we will link it after the show because we don't want you to leave right now and watch it. We want you to watch it after.
That's right. And thanks to everyone who's been watching it and sharing it. And I will say, a friend of mine called me to say that it made him miss saying thank you, Rail, and hearing someone yell "coffee break" from the wings. So little pieces of animated theater. Again, before we start, one little piece of good news. Chi Chan, who's been on our show, received her official green card in the mail a few days ago. It was, to say the least, an emotional and happy moment for her. Congratulations, Chi. We are so happy for you and can't wait to have you back on to tell us what you've been up to. Associate designers. So we've asked over 100, I think now, entertainment professionals about their career path. And since I'm not a guest on the show, I've never answered this question until now. I began as an assistant and did it for many, many years. So I have immense respect for the job. They are often the hardest people hardest workers in the room. And it's surprising to me that few people know what they actually do. So we're going to clear that up a little bit and find out a thing or two about our guests. So Drew, let's bring them in.
Alrighty, our first guest is Jessica Krieger. Hello, Jessica.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, Jess.
Thank you so much for joining us. And next is Kate Ducey. Hey, Kate.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good. I saw who was next, and it's Nick, and I'm not even going to try his last name. I'm sorry, Nick.
Say it, Nick.
Hi.
Say it for him.
Solium. Dang.
No, Drew,
Yeah.
you have to try it. You have to say it. That's part of the show.
I know. I felt like it was eeasier. Yeah, I know.
How about this? You tell him to say your last name, and you say his.
Oh yeah. Solium.
Drew Quinones.
Damn. Well, you're good.
Pretty good.
All right, let's bring our last guest of the night, Christopher Vergara. Hello, Christopher.
Hey, happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. All right, well, let's get started.
Let's get started. Nick, let's start with you. So we're here to talk about all of your work as associate designers, but first, please tell us what initially sparked your interest in design. What made you say to yourself, this is the business for me?
So I think it can't be separated from like the love of theater in general. I was the type of household where Les Mis and Phantom were on loop during dishes and dinner and things like that. And my mom took me to see Peter Pan. And so I think it started there with the family and my mom's love of musicals. But for me, intellectually thinking back on it, it is like this art and tech merged together that I find very attractive, and that is probably what I would distill it down to. But in terms of experience, also, I started in high school in Burbank, California, being a performer and also a backstage tech and all sorts of things as one does in high school. So yeah. I think I put it to the soundtracks and then on from there.
Sure. Peter Pan is definitely a gateway for a lot of people who've been on this show. Kate, how about you?
Kind of a similar answer. I started as a performer. My parents took me to a community theater version of Annie when I was 5, and I apparently pointed at the stage and said, I want to do that. And started doing theater. I did my first show when I was 6. And then in high school, I've been doing a lot of photography. And my theater troupe, I'm from a small town, my high school troupe was like 14 people. So when we needed a lighting designer or like somebody to help out with lights or sets or whatever, it always ended up being me. And I just loved it. This like merging of the things that I loved about photography and getting to be in the theater and help tell stories.
Yeah. And now you merge lights and sets as a projection designer. Is a true merge.
Yeah. And even more of the photography, I shoot a lot of my content moving or still, and that was sort of my gateway into projection design. It was like, I want to take these things and then make the light move in a new way.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna say your background is fascinating to me for a number of reasons. Number one, It all looks great. But number two, it's mostly empty. So good job. Yes.
Oh, I painted that actually.
Oh, excellent.
So
Great.
it's like,
Wow.
Did you really?
yeah, in grad school, I took a scenic design or a scenic painting course because projection is a lot of times used essentially as scenic painting, and I wanted to know what that art form really was. And many hours.
My scenic design teacher, I can still hear him yelling at me about my renderings. Not pretty. Jess, how about you?
Yeah.
What
So
made
I
you
have
consider
a
yourself-
completely opposite story in that I did not grow up in a theater household. So I had no exposure to theater really when I was a kid. I think we went to see Sesame Street Live a couple times, and that was about it. I was a full and complete total jock. So I played soccer, and that's what I did. I was on the varsity team starting freshman year, and soccer was my entire life.
Cool.
So I started theater a lot later, and that all goes back to my first high school breakup, where I was very sad. And my best friend at the time was like, "You're sad. You should come to this unmarked door at our school that you've never seen before and come meet some people." So I found people that I had apparently been looking for my whole life because I never really felt like I fit in with the soccer kids. I was just very good at it, so I stayed. And then I walked into this room and all of a sudden found people that I saw and felt like they saw me for the first time. And so I kind of stuck with it.
Beautiful. The unmarked door.
Yeah.
Christopher, who's coming to us from that, we thought we've had people from Australia on the show, but I think Christopher wins as far as distance.
Yeah.
In answering the question, Christopher, please tell everyone where you are.
Hey, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Sure.
I'm calling in from Vietnam right now. So Phu Quoc, which is an island off the coast of Vietnam, and happy to be here. I guess my interest in design started a lot when I was very young, and it's from my grandma actually. Growing up, she wanted to be a nurse, but her family at the time, told her that was a job for spinsters, and that she was going to have a family, and she needed to learn something that she could do at home. And so she learned how to sew, and she was a very capable seamstress. And so then I learned watching her at the foot of her machine, learned how to sew and how clothes got put together. But, that wasn't something that boys were supposed to do. So it was sort of this costuming or making clothes or that action was a sort of subversive action, was this thing that I wasn't supposed to do, but that I did anyway. And I think that was really interesting to me. And so I learned watching her. And even though I wasn't supposed to be doing that, that's what I've dedicated my life, and sort of it's like reparations for her not being able to follow her dreams.
Yeah, amazing. It's a great story. So it was also a little bit of rebelliousness on your part. Like,
Right.
I can do this.
Well, we'll stick with you, Christopher. And this is kind of like a two-part question. What was your path to where you are now, and did you go to school for design, or tell us a little bit about the beginning of your career and what you decided assisting was the path for you that you were going to take?
So, like I said, it wasn't something necessarily that I was interested in. I was always like an artsy kid, like many people here. So I actually wanted to go to school for music. But my parents sort of forbade it, said you couldn't do that or to study the arts. So I actually went to school in the middle of Indiana, Valparaiso University, because it was a place where I could go to school and I could pay for it myself. I said, if I'm going to study, the arts and sort of defy my parents' wishes, the least I can do is not take their money while doing it. So I went there, and they thought I was an international business major for about 2 years
Oh my God.
before they found
That's
out.
amazing.
And it was funny because they would see my report card and they were like, "Why are you taking all these music classes?" I'm like, "Oh, it's part of my scholarship. That's not." So I did that, and so then to support myself, I had to get a job, and one of the highest paying jobs, which is opposite from the world that we live in, one of the highest paying jobs on campus was working in the costume shop. It was considered skilled labor. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. And so I spent 4 years sewing and making in the costume shop, and then towards the end of it, designing some shows. And then from there, I went to the School of Juilliard's internship program, thinking that I would just do that for a year and return to music. And I just have never gone back. So I have my degree is in music, and I've just been working in costumes.
It's almost a
number of years.
Sorry, I was going to say that's almost a similar premise as the movie Coco, where where he made shoes and then but wanted to play music.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was funny because at my time at Juilliard, I was like, oh, I want to go back to music, and they were the ones like, you've been supporting yourself for now 5 years in costumes. I think that's really your profession, and music is going to take a different role in your life, and it has, and it's been I've enjoyed the path.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. Nick, how about you? Tell us about your path and.
So I feel very lucky in that I was a kid who felt very strongly pulled towards theater and lighting in particular since I was young. And so I had a clear thought of setting out, I'm going to try to do this thing, and I want to read about schools that teach this thing. So I went to Cal State Long Beach in Southern California for my undergrad. Worked for about a year and went to NYU for graduate school, and used that to help me get cross country as well. Moving by yourself at 23 or 24 also was daunting at the time. So going to school, I thought, was a good way to get to New York and also have an established set of colleagues, which I have been friends to this day. So assisting, I think we need to talk a little bit about the reality of life in assisting coming out of grad school. And when you're presented with a design option for $200 and an assisting job for $2,000, I think we have to. I was in a position where I had to consider those types of things in my life, and also I feel that my people skills is something I pride myself on, and being able to keep people in communication and working with each other, and that lends itself well to, as we'll discuss later on, as to the job that I do now as an associate and assistant.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. Kate, how about you?
My path is a little winding. So as I mentioned, I thought I wanted to be an actor. And so I went to Northwestern for acting, but spent the whole time lighting designing and doing a little stage management. And then I stayed in Chicago for 2 years and was a professional actor and did fairly well at it. And that finally gave me the freedom to say, hey, I don't really want to do this. So I moved to LA to work in television, and I worked in production office, which was essentially production management, for 6 years. And then I really wanted something that had more of a mix of creative and management, and decided to go back to school for lighting design. And then ended up in a production design program instead. So I started grad school at 30. I moved to New York in 2017 at 33 and started assisting, to pay the bills. And then it turned out and I still design as well, but I think most of us probably do. But I really like assisting. It's a good mix of the creative and the management skills that I've developed.
Where did you study projection design?
I went to UT Austin, so I studied under Sven Ortel.
Yeah.
And he's amazing.
Yep, amazing.
He's great. And I had always intended to move back to LA, actually, but then between him being a New York designer and having applied for the Wingspace mentorship and gotten it, it just felt like everything was sort of pointing me toward New York.
Welcome.
I ended up here. Thank you.
Awesome. And Jess?
Yeah, so after I found my people, I fully ditched my plan to become a physical therapist and was like, I'm obviously just gonna go to school for this.
Yeah.
And I'm from a small town in Arizona, and I do not come from a financially beneficial background or a financially well-off background. So I had to go to school in state. I didn't have an option because I had to pay for it myself and support my way through it.
Mhm.
But I'm very grateful that the University of Arizona had a phenomenal BFA program that like fully helped me become who I am today. And then I had the great opportunity to be an apprentice at Santa Fe Opera, which fully skyrocketed my love of assisting. So I was an apprentice one year, and then I came back as a lighting supervisor the next year. And so the lighting supervisors at the Santa Fe Opera are the in-house assistants for 5 designers that come in to do 5 different shows. And so that's when I realized that I like paperwork a whole lot more than sitting behind a desk and making art, I admit. And I always found meeting designers much more pleasurable than meeting directors. And it balances both sides of my brain,
Cool.
which is what led me to assisting.
So do you play soccer still?
I do in my spare time, but it's really hard to play recreationally when you have a really sporadic schedule. So I am really good friends with the wall ball court down the street, and we pass it back and forth. It's a good time. We're good friends.
Amazing. Okay, so let's talk about what you do. As I sort of said before, it's surprising to me, maybe I didn't say this before, but it's always surprising to me when someone who works in the entertainment industry doesn't know exactly what I do. And so when, it's equally surprising or maybe shocking when a producer or general manager says they don't understand what an assistant does or why they're necessary. Blows my mind. So as we discussed on this show so many times, there are so many different opinions about what assistants and associates do. So what is your general description or opinion? What is the job of the associate designer? Kate, let's start with you.
Oh, I'm probably the weirdest because it's so strange in projection. So we're the world where it probably has like the least defined jobs, but I think overarching, the associate is the person who needs to know the show really, really well, like sometimes better than the designer does. Because when your designer leaves the room for whatever reason, you're suddenly the designer in the room and you have to be able to answer all the questions. And then if there's ever another production, you end up being the designer in the room, trying to recreate the thing that you made however long ago. So you're in charge of making sure that like everything is documented to within an inch of its life and you can recreate the thing essentially. And then, as a projection designer, there's also some content creation and drafting and knowing how the projectors work and all that stuff.
Not small, I don't think.
Not small. But yeah, that's sort of specific to projection. As an associate, I tend to do a lot less editing than I do as an assistant. But again, it depends on how big the team is.
Yeah. So let's go to a lighting designer next. We're gonna bookend the lighting designers in the middle. Nick, what is your definition about what an associate does?
Do? So in the general conceptual term, I think of it as the right-hand person to the designer, facilitator, communicator, and I think of it myself as a little bit of a chief of staff, if we're thinking about politics or things in that way. And that's mostly it comes from how I like to work, as being the funnel of communication and the keeper of all of the floating pieces and juggling and spinning plates, and knowing who to go to for answers. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, it is also someone who is a facilitator from day one with the drafting and the bid process and lighting, and general right hand person.
Yeah.
That's how I would put it.
Jess, what would you add to that?
Yes, and completely agree with everything Nick just said.
Yeah.
I always explain it as it is my job to deal with the details down to the smallest and the minutia, so the designer can focus on the art ultimately. So I can take all the crap that no one wants to do, that most people don't want to deal with, and let them just focus on what they want to do. And ultimately, it's just helping the designer and the team make the show happen, and taking my expertise and bringing that to the table and saying, how can I help? What do you need?
Cool. And Chris, so it's very different in the world of costume. I think it was probably like years into my career where I actually sat down in negotiating rooms, which Chris and Jess and I were just on, the off-Broadway negotiating room. Congratulations, by the way. I learned how much work a costume associate does. So Chris, can you tell everyone what that means?
I think at the base of it is supporting the work of the designer, and through getting the goal of the show and getting it set up. And it's different. I think for every designer, it's different, the kind of support that they want. And so you have to sort of change yourself depending on who you're working for or in what capacity to what they need. So there's some designers who you work for and you start from zero, where you're there to help research or help in the designing phase, in the drawing phase, and in some ways providing support in that through the presentation, through production, through tech. For some, I come in at after the design phase, and there's here's the work, get it done, or how do you you need to help get the bid and get it into the shops and built. But it's exactly like my other colleagues have said. It's about getting the work completed, taking care of those tasks so that the designer can focus on the areas that they wanted to focus on, and taking care of all the minutia, the day-to-day issues of what is needed to get the production up and running.
So a lot of costume associates say, and maybe tell me if you agree with this, that you're as the associate running your own department. Like the set designers and lighting designers and sound designers and production designers have a production manager that kind of runs that part, and they know oftentimes very little about the costume department. So that falls on you. Is that your feeling?
Yeah, I would have to agree. Many times I've had technical directors or production managers who say they just don't understand costumes. And so a lot of the support that you would get sort of like in the bid process, for example, like they're there to help you and negotiate and can compare the different bids. But that's something that we have to do by ourselves and set up these complicated documents about for bids, and to know how through the production process of the building and the setting up, we have to schedule our own fittings. We have to set up those rooms. We have to deal with all those issues, take the notes. So it's a weird thing. Why I would love to know the history of how that happened.
Yeah.
But it's something that I hope that we can work on, because it would be helpful to have that support. In the process.
And you're dealing with budgeting also, right? Do you keep the spreadsheet?
Correct.
Like that's something that we, when I was an assistant, I don't know if it's like that for the other three people on the panel, but I never worried about spending money on a gel or like a piece of color, on a light. It was always, someone else was dealing with that, and I was, dealing with the paperwork. But I imagine, or I hear that in the costume world, you are also your own spreadsheet maker.
Exactly. We have to maintain and keep up on top of all the work, a budget. So you're making purchases, and you might have multiple people making purchases. So you have to oversee that. You have to oversee the shops. You're probably in a large musical into a number of shops, shoemakers, hat makers, undergarments. There are lots of different pieces of the ecosystem that makes a costume that we have to be overseeing during the process.
And now we've all been a little more educated about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only part of the budget I have to keep track of is usually stock content. It's like if we spend money on stock footage, I have to keep track of where all that is coming from and how long we own the rights to it and all of that jazz. But nothing like what Chris has been
It's
talking
so
about.
complicated, because that's the sort of thing that gets you down the line. No one really thinks, people think like projection's great. Let's throw something up on a screen or on the wall or whatever. But
Yeah, but you have to own the rights to
You have to pay
everything,
for it,
and you can
right.
get sued, especially
Yeah.
on a big show. So
yeah,
And that sourcing is the other like something that we share is that
Right.
we have to it's not just go buy lumber. That's not what scenery does, or like just order
Right.
certain kind of like we have to find every single piece of fabric and trim and lining and
Yeah.
that takes up a lot of time too. And there are people who specialize just in that aspect of the work, right? Finding the materials to do the work.
wow.
yeah, that's kind of similar too, because our stuff is always like very, very layered. You never just put a piece of stock content on stage, or I hope not. And so like you have to know where every piece of it is coming from.
Right. So what's the difference between an assistant and an associate? So I'm gonna ask a few follow-up questions actually, and this isn't the rapid fire section that we're gonna do later, but let's rapid fire through this. So Nick, in your opinion, what's the difference between assistant and associate?
Broadly speaking, I think that the associate is empowered to speak with the designer's voice, like has been mentioned, when the person's not there. And then on a practical level, in the lighting department, the associate's on for prep to do the light plot, and the assistant joins us in tech, mostly to do with a full-time job that is follow spots on a big musical.
Yeah. Jess, you want to yes and that?
Sure. That's exactly what I was going to say, though. So yes, and next.
Wow. Yeah. Christopher, what would you say the difference is?
I think there's yes, and Nick.
Yeah.
There's the level of trust, a certain level of trust that an associate has. There's sort of a length of relationship probably with that designer, so that you are able to speak in their voice, in their absence when needed, and in like a large production, the assistants, depending on the number of assistants you have, the associate oversees usually the other assistants. So that's like a specific responsibility of the associate that you have mentioned before, sort of a head of staff and overseeing in our area, other assistants, shoppers, buyers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And Kate, how about in projections?
In a big musical, I'd say yes and to all of that. It's the same. On a smaller show, like a play or an off-Broadway show, sometimes I'm the only person. And the definition between like assistant and associate is basically how many jobs am I doing? Like if I'm really just coming in to create content and I have no voice in the room, you can call me an assistant. If I'm doing all of the drafting and I'm making all the content, and sometimes I'm programming off Broadway. Don't tell anyone. Then a lot of times I'm called the associate.
Sometimes I'm programming off Broadway, so don't tell anyone.
Yeah, the first show I ever was the associate for was with you, Jeff.
Was that
20th Century Blues?
20th Century Blues, right?
Yeah,
course.
it was my first show in New York. And Beowulf left me on day 2 and was like, "You're good here, right?" And left.
And you were, so congratulations.
Thank goodness.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Chris, I'm gonna go back to you because you had mentioned that there's people who need to know like about material, like individual people. How much technical knowledge do you feel that you have to have?
A great deal about the construction of clothing, depending on, costumes has a wide range where it can be just, a simple dress to something that's very complicated that can now light up, can have mechanical moving parts, can go into that craft area. And so there's a wide breadth of information that you need to know. And I think one of the tricky things is coordinating. So you have, different makers and how you coordinate them together when you're making a more complicated technical costume. So it can be technical, like in the way we might think about it, like with gadgets and gizmos and stuff, and then but also technical in the drafting of the pattern. Clothing from different periods and how they come together and the practices to get it to look right for different time periods is really important too. So there's that technical aspect to the making of the costumes as well.
Awesome. And Jess, how about you?
Yeah, so I like to say that I hold enough technical knowledge to convey ideas and not annoy the electrician. That's my goal. Is I want to be able to know, like, I need to know what it can do. I don't need to know exactly how it got there.
Yeah.
Just like save space in my own brain. But the amount of technical knowledge that a lighting associate needs on a computer scale, I think, is important, because yeah, you'll know lights can do certain things, which is very quick to pick up on, but I don't need to know how the network is run. I just need to know that it's functional and I need it to do X, Y, Z.
Okay.
And so being able to convey that information, as well as, drafting, database management, things like that on a organizational front.
Cool. And Kate, how about you in the projection world?
There's a lot. I mean, it's a very technical field and it's constantly changing. So there's a lot to keep up with. We also sit at the nexus a lot of times, especially in a musical, between like all of the departments where we're getting literal data inputs from sound and lighting and scenic. And so you have to have at least a basic understanding of, what those words mean. Like what signal flow am I getting and how does it work? So at least I can speak to all the other departments.
And why doesn't it ever work the first time you hook it up?
Well, nothing works the first time. Yeah, no,
Sorry.
it's true. Or why didn't it work today when it worked yesterday?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, and then also like digital content creation and photography and videography and 3D modeling and.
Yeah. So yes. So big yes.
So yes.
Yeah. And Nick?
So I think there's a lot for conceptual knowledge. I would sort of split it down between conceptual knowledge, like knowing how everything in the room is working, versus being able to execute it yourself, because you will have colleagues whose job it is to set up your fiber network and things like that. But it also becomes very much your problem to discuss, and if things are not going as to plan. But also, and then one tiny caveat for situations where you find yourself working without all of the support that we get on Broadway shows, and you are, like we've said, the many hats, the person who's in the room that needs to get the set computer talking to the lighting computer, and or in a different language, or if there's a language barrier or something else, So two different answers, but yes,
sure.
is my answer.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna sort of rewind for a moment, actually. So sort of changing the subject slightly, how much time do you spend on a project? Do you, Nick, let's stick with you. Do you, I guess not even on average, like what's the, on a typical project, how long are you sticking around?
Conceptually, it's prep and then load into opening, right? But that could be anything from 4 weeks to 4 months for a typical show, right?
Yep.
And then for subsequent productions, it could be years of a tour and international companies and things like that.
Yep.
So that's the sort of conceptual and the detailed version.
Does anyone want to add anything to that? I'll do it this
I think for us, the costume, sometimes it can be, exactly like 10 to 12 weeks into leading up to a opening, but sometimes there are productions, especially, for example, when you work in opera, where we design those, years, a year or two in advance of the production, and so you have to sort of remind yourself. Or for very large musicals, you can be doing like it could be a long design period, and then before you come back to the actual production of it, because there might be a number of levels of approval that might need to go through, so it varies depending on the project. And then, like what Nick said, then the life of it afterwards.
Sure, if you're if you're lucky to have that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that those like prep weeks are often spread out over a very long period of time. So it's like I'll do 3 days drafting, and then it gets sent out for bid, and then we don't hear anything for 3 months. So like it's not like just the 3 weeks before the show or whatever.
Yeah, sure. Jess, you want to add anything?
It was all covered. So.
Yeah, that's covered. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jess, we'll go to you for the next one. What about being an associate do you enjoy?
So I truly love being a team manager and being the person who communicates with all the other departments and really takes all of the puzzle pieces that everyone has crafted themselves in some unique way and finding the way to put it all together and using creative problem solving and communication skills to bring the whole image to life. I love being the nucleus of all the information and being able to disseminate what needs to be said and what doesn't need to be said, and finding times and the flow of when that bit of information might need to be shared. I also really enjoy the flexibility of it because I get to work on such a wide array of projects, and it's always a new show is always going to stretch my skills in a new way.
Cool.
So it's always nice to do something new.
Awesome. Chris, what about you?
I gotta say I love some beautiful paperwork.
Yeah.
It makes me so happy when it's like just perfect. And I enjoy the problem solving. I think as associates we do a lot of problem solving, and so like when you there's like that moment at the beginning where you have to sort of lay out the course of how it's going to happen. So like the calendar, the budget, the figuring out the makers, and like putting the puzzle piece together of what the path is going to be for success is one of my favorite parts. Just sitting there by yourself with the designs, thinking about how to figure it all out and how it might happen, and laying out that plan and putting it on paper. So that other people can see it. I really enjoy that part of the process.
Awesome. Nick, how about you?
I think Jess said it very well, she used the word nucleus, and that I enjoyed that. But I just want to add one tiny little nod towards a scale, and that can be fun, and compared to shows that I would presumably be designing on my own, shows that I am the associate on can have some very fun scale factors to
That's
them.
a great point. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that's something that I get enjoyment out of.
Awesome. Kate.
Yeah, everything everyone said. I mean, I took a personality quiz once that said I should be an accountant. So I've parlayed that love of spreadsheets into being an associate. I love getting to facilitate the creative process and like participate a little bit here and there and be such a close witness to it on a scale that, I wouldn't otherwise get to be a part of and fly on the wall for. There's also something really great about having some creative input in a process, but not ultimately being the one who is responsible for everything and like responsible for all of the ideas. And I don't have to deal with the politics. So
That one.
Yeah.
it can be kind of a relief.
But we all know there's not zero politics.
Correct.
There's not zero politics when, I choose, I am lucky I get to choose to work for designers that I don't feel like I have to play politics with, but there's still some within the teams, of course.
I hear you, but also I get your point about the stakeholder level of production versus inter-team level.
Yeah, it's not my ass on the line, like ultimately, so it's kind of nice.
That's there is something kind of nice about that. I spent years doing like work for other designers, And I know there's a lot of talk about, how maybe that's not the most positive thing, but I learned so much, and it was not my ass on the line. Someone else's name was on that. So if I screwed it up, I didn't want to screw it up. I have pride in what I do, and I wanted it to look great, and I wanted to be hired again. But there was something about that, at the end of the day, there was a little bit less pressure on me because I knew that I wasn't going to be the one that, that would be thrown outside.
Yeah. Not having to have all the creative answers. Like sometimes a director looks at you and they're like, this isn't working. What else should we do? And you're like, I don't know.
Well,
as a
it actually
designer.
brings up an interesting question that someone asked me earlier today. What do you do when, you're sitting next to the designer or near the designer and you hear all the conversations? What happens when the designer, what happens when you have a better idea, when you think you have the answer and the designer doesn't have it? How do you convey that? Do you speak up? I'll answer at once. No, Chris.
Yes, of course. I think you offer your suggestions to the design. I think that's like the difference. I think you may not necessarily speak directly to the director, depending on the relationship that you might have. There are some directors that with the designer you've worked for a long time, and so they trust your opinion as well. But you definitely, everybody's sharing in a healthy working team. Everybody feels comfortable sharing, the best ideas because we want the team to be successful in the work.
And in lighting, when things are happening at lightning speed, do you find a way in? Can you, in the course of a 10 out of 12, which I guess we're not doing anymore, but like a long day in a theater, how do you jump in? Like at what point do you like tap the designer on the shoulder and say, I think I have the answer for you? Jess.
I think it totally depends on the designer and your relationship to them and reading the room and seeing where their energy is. And if they're open to a suggestion or if they need to work through it themselves, which is often the case, even if they need to struggle through it. But in my opinion, there's no room for ego because ultimately my opinion doesn't matter because like they have to take it and there's a right and wrong time for it and making sure that you're not coming in at the wrong time because it can make the situation even worse.
Sure. Would anyone like to add anything to that?
The timing is everything, and your relationship is everything.
Yeah.
It would in a heated moment, or knowing. I could think of moments where chiming in a heated, stressful moment might be very, very helpful, and times when it wouldn't, and you should save it till a morning coffee break or something else.
Sure.
So it is the people skills and everything about your relationship and the timing of that piece of information. But I would hope, and I try to work with people who want me there and want my eyes, and want my eyes, and want nearly all the time I do, and so that's my answer on that.
Yeah. Kate, you want to add anything to that?
Just that I would pretty much never approach it as, hey, I have the right idea.
Totally, exactly.
Just like I have an idea if it's helpful. It's sort of the way you sneak those things in there. But and everything that everyone else said about timing and the designer, like some designers, Peter Negrini, for example, will very clearly state like, I don't know what, I don't have anything for this. Anyone?
Help me. Yeah, bail me out.
But some designers want sort of a constant flow of your ideas. And they don't want to have to ask you for it. So you have to sort of feel those things out.
Yeah. So you are all freelancers, right? None of you work for a company. So you work for many designers. How do you manage working for so many different personalities? Do you change your approach depending on who you work for? Nick, let's start with you.
Totally. I think yes is the answer. Absolutely. And I think the meta conversation is so important and what I mean about that is talking about how it's going and talking about how you work and talking about the meta discussion of your work, and I'm make that clear with people that I'm working with for the first time that it's like I want to have 5 minutes before our first tech session or after our first tech session or every day and say, tell me how it's working and how it's not, things like that. And on Harry Potter with Neil Austin, that was my first time working with him because we were bringing a British production over, and I was a New Yorker, and we would sit on the edge of the deck, and I would just say, what do you need? How's it going? Like, the meta conversation is very important to me.
Sure.
And I feel like thinking about how you're working, it will lead you to the right way.
Yeah.
And talking about it, because it shouldn't be a secret if things are not if you're not getting what you need.
Would anyone like to add anything to that answer?
Totally. I agree with everything Nick said. I think that I have a tendency to be a chameleon. And so whenever I go to the next designer, I'll spin up the Rolodex and see what the profile is of the person I'm sitting next to and immediately adjust certain things about myself, which is either an unhealthy or very healthy way to think about it. And immediately just make those adjustments moving forward and dealing with those people.
Yeah.
And it just changes who you are.
Sure.
Yeah, depending on which designers you're working for, like the roles is good cop, bad cop. Some designers need you to be the bad cop. Some designers you need to be the good cop. You need to be, and just figuring out the role that you need to play in the room that you're in is part of the work of a successful associate that can work with different designers, can work in different mediums, can work in different scales. You just have to be able to adjust yourself to the situation that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
Kate, anything else? Yeah. Go ahead.
I just say in projection, people comes from such different backgrounds as far as like scenic or lighting or painting or
Photography.
all sorts of things. Photography, that they have different desires for what they want from an associate. So a lot of times for me, it's really a conversation at the beginning as to like, what is it that you're looking for?
Sure.
And that helps guide who I am to them and how I can help them out.
So we're totally running long here, but we're going to do this. So I'm going to ask you to let's do a quick day in the life at work, fast forward version. Jess, let's start with you. It's the first day of tech. Can you tell us what your day is on that first day of tech? From when you wake up in the morning, what happens?
Absolutely. Follow-up question. Have we had dry tech yet?
I'm going to say yes. Let's say this is a big show. First day of tech on a big musical.
Understood. All right. So first day, wake up, roll out of bed, shower, and then grab my coffee, hit the subway, go to work. It's probably 8:30 at this point because I'm going to take it slow on our first day of work for tech. I'm going to get to the theater and check in with the electrician, see if there are notes that I need to check in on or if there were notes that needed to be done. Hopefully we're in good shape and just getting ready and cleaning up for cast to come on stage. Making sure we're ready to rock and we have need to deal with any last minute anythings. And then most importantly, I'll check with the stage manager that morning to see how they're doing and see if they need anything from us, if they needed any clarifications as we go into the opening number. And then we have lunch. And then cast on stage after lunch. They may or may not be in costumes. And then we start properly teching. Sit down, go through step by step the cues we made in dry tech. And then it'll be dinner. And then we'll do it again after dinner.
That's I want to do it. It makes me want to do it right now. Chris, let's go to you next, and let's say for the purposes of this exercise that they are wearing costumes on the first day of tech. What is your first day of tech like? So
you're waking up early. I like to wake up early so that I can I can start the day on my terms. And then you get to the theater, you're checking in with your wardrobe supervisor if they need anything, with your stage manager to check in on where you're going to start, what the goals are for the day. Usually there's some piece of something that is last minute at a maker. So you're sitting there a little stressed, waiting for that assistant or shopper to bring it to the theater so that you can just check that off your list. I'm checking my list that I make daily of all the things that need to happen, and start checking those off. Once the actors arrive after lunch, usually we have about 30 minutes to get them dressed, and everybody's anxious to get started. So those 30 minutes is, you feel that pressure from all the departments. So you want to make sure that everything is in their rooms and they're getting dressed. You're probably checking in with your stars or your principal actors to make sure that they are doing good, that if they have any questions that they want to ask you or things that they want to get to you. And usually for like the first day, I like to like stand just off the stage wherever the actors are coming in to check them one last time before they go on stage, just to make sure that I'm seeing them. But then it's like what Jess said, then you start teching the show, and it's, however many hours to dinner, and then after dinner, and then you wrap it up. Because I'm a night owl, I like to do the notes at night. So many times I'll drop off, if there are things that need to be dropped off to makers to get done, instead of doing it like at the crack of dawn in the morning, which is what's happening right here. I don't know if you can see.
I have seen
it. The sun is coming up. I paid a lot of money for that lighting effect. I like to take it I end my day dropping off packages to different shops who over the years have trusted me and given me like keys to their buildings. So I can like leave it them so that they can start working on whatever notes might need to be worked on for the next day.
Kate, first of all, thanks, Jess, Chris, amazing. I can see it. I can smell it. Kate, how about you?
Yeah, very similar. Get up early, grab lots of coffee. I try to get to the theater about a half hour before my designer when things are spinning up, because it gives me time to like go over my list, make sure I've checked my email to see if anybody needs something from another department that they emailed me at 2 a.m. And then as the rest of the team comes in, I check in with our video engineer, check in with the programmer, check in with the editors, see where they are with various edits, make sure there's nothing that's still in process that's going to need to make it to stage that day. And if so, I sort of nudge them along with those things. And, I end up checking in with almost all of the other departments on a musical, music, sound, lighting, stage management, not costumes, no, usually. Maybe someday we'll be projecting on the costumes, and I'll get to talk to the costume
I'm sure.
associate more. But
it's got to be happening somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, and then that half hour once cast comes in after lunch before they actually make it to stage is usually sort of a mad rush of making sure we're actually ready to hit the top of the show.
Yeah.
And then we usually spend the rest of the day slogging through the top of the show.
Yes, we do. Nick, anything you'd like to add to that?
All perfectly well said, but sometimes I know electricians might be frustrated with me, but I might ask to actually see battery pieces turn on with my own eyes, and they might. But just wanted what Christopher was saying by standing at the door, and I do it gently, and I say, can I that thing that needs to turn on in the very first day, can I see it really quick? Can you just bring it out on stage?
That's so smart. I mean, absolutely.
That's really smart.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you on behalf of all lighting designers and everyone else who has to deal with the light up thing, because they don't work, right? I mean, that's the thing. They mostly don't work. So it's good.
Well, we've all learned it the hard way, that it's the first day of tech and the first thing doesn't turn on and everyone turns around.
Right. To the people sitting in the center of the room at the big table.
Yeah.
Your fault. I'm sorry.
Kate had mentioned that she likes to get there before the designer. Was that everybody's
emphatic
a thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Sometimes
if you're not there before your designer, you're late.
Well, and then there's designers who trick you, who you tell them when they should come in, and then they're there 2 hours earlier, and I'm like, come on, I had this planned.
Yeah.
Okay.
I walked in with coffee for you, and now it's
Sometimes you just can't sleep, and what else are you going to do?
Stay
Walk in
home
circles.
till we tell you to come to the theater.
That's right. No taken.
Just realize that we run your lives and let it happen.
That's right. No taken.
All right. Well, we're coming
Drew.
up. We're coming up on an hour, and we're going to go to our rapid fire. That we're going to rapid fire for real.
That's
Jeff's
right.
Roundtable Rapid Fire.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. Look at me, not even rapid firing. Nick, you're up.
Nick, favorite thing to do when you aren't working? Let's say this is pre-COVID.
Attending a baseball game.
Hey,
I'm
Jess.
stressed out about going fast.
Indoor rock climbing, because almost every city has a climbing gym, so you can just take your shoes and climb.
Yeah, Christopher.
I play rugby, so I really enjoy playing rugby.
Oh, nice.
These are great. Kate.
I do trapeze and fabric.
Oh my God, you guys are the best. Kate, best advice given to you by anyone?
My dad always says that the 3 keys to success are availability, affability, and ability, in that order. And I think it's very true.
Yes, Christopher.
I don't. It's not for everybody, but the best advice I got early on was to only make a living in my field, because hunger and homelessness are great motivators.
Jess.
Don't compare your path to other people's. It'll do you no good. Your journey is uniquely yours.
Nick.
I mean, I was going to say grass is always greener. It's a different thing. It's a different way of saying that, but it's everyone in this business. Yeah, your grass is always greener. That's what I got. And you got to be, yeah.
I hope everyone's listening. This is all great
It's
advice.
really, really hard to internalize that.
Yeah.
I struggle with it.
Yeah.
It's great advice. A skill that an associate such as yourself has to have that a designer does not have to have.
I'm going to say Vectorworks proficiency at this point. I do a lot of non-drafting.
Yeah.
Yeah, with designers. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say not that it's an ability, but just to remove the burden from the designer is constantly thinking 5 steps ahead so they can remain present.
Cool. Yeah. Chris.
I think we have to remember, and that's part of our work is in documenting, but when we have to do it again and again, hopefully if you get to do it again and again, or if there are things from meetings that you've been to, you're the one who has to recall and be able to bring that recollection up at the right moments.
Yeah. Kate.
I'd say a lot of the more technical aspects as a projection designer, like they don't necessarily need to know how to make the content or any of those things. They need to just be able to communicate ideas.
Got it.
And know how the tools sort of generally work.
Kate, something you wish you knew at the beginning of your career.
I'm only 3 years in, so I don't really have an answer to that one.
You will. We'll come back to you in a few years. Chris.
One of the things that I think was help is that I learned the hard way is how to manage a fee-based lifestyle where you don't have like a paycheck or the payments aren't like given to you in drips and drabs. And so that's something that I try to talk to with my interns, with assistants, with students. It's like, okay, so when you get this big check, how do you manage it? And how do you learn to manage your money when it's supposed to last you a while?
Yeah.
So I have tricks and tips about that.
I think at some point we're going to do a whole episode on the business of freelancing. So, stay tuned.
I can talk about how I do it. I put it all in a bank account and I give myself a paycheck.
Yeah.
And sometimes I give myself a raise. Sometimes I have to call myself into the office and lower my salary. It can get real tense, but it was the first time I worked on a show at the Guthrie, and the money came in and it went out, and it was supposed to last a few months, and I learned the hard way about that.
It's a good answer.
Jess.
Negotiation skills and tactics, especially as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had those. So
you will.
Working on it.
You will.
Working on it.
Ask Jess. Nick.
Relax a little bit when you're not working.
Yeah, that's great.
I struggled with that too.
Yep.
Oh, you know what? I do have one that
Great.
I learned this year. Don't let the job become everything that defines you.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Hard. I mean, easier now, but a year and a half ago, very hard.
Yeah, when it's 100 hours a week, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I've lost my Nick, hardest part of your job.
I think it's the people skills. You're working with 150 people in a room, all trying to get the same product on stage, but with all different personalities. And
yeah. Jess.
Yeah.
Unspoken expectations.
Great. Chris.
Okay.
I think managing and the institutional and systemic racism that exists in the American theater, like as a person of color, especially as a man of color, which there aren't that many men of color associates, like working on Broadway, like your paperwork always has to be perfect. It always has to be on time. You always have to be in budget. There's you have to just be extra always, and that can get tiring sometimes.
Absolutely. Kate.
Yeah, pretty much always being the only woman in the room.
Mm.
Yeah.
There's a reason Jess and I bonded.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, hopefully we're heading in a better direction all around, so that none of you have to say that anymore. I think that is the goal. Kate, what is the favorite part of the process for you?
Tech.
Chris.
It's crazy and stressful, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love the first draft of a budget where you're like, this is my dream. And before you have to start negotiating, you're like, wow, this is it. So
yeah. Jess.
Besides cueing a gigantic dance number, I love a huge conventional focus where the designer just trusts me to do it and just goes away. Just lets me focus the lights.
Amazing. Nick.
Specifically the day when the orchestra shows up.
Yeah.
Like the last piece.
All right.
It's the
It's a
last
good one.
piece. And then you have to go back to the piano the next afternoon, and it's so sad, just
I know.
piano.
That's what that sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. Nick, what would you like to invent or see invented, work related or otherwise? Anything that you want to invent.
Instant teleportation.
A popular answer. Jess.
I did not even think about it. Okay. Can I plead the fifth? Because I don't want to give it away on the internet. And apparently magical spells was an option.
Magical spells is an option. You can, if that's what you want. Chris.
I wish there existed a database of all actors' measurements, because I can tell you how much time we spend looking for those. And if I would collect them and share them with the world.
That's amazing.
How would you keep them up to date?
It was automatic.
It's automatic, yeah.
Or you come in, there's a place like at Times Square where you go in and you every so often you go in and check in or something. I don't know, but chase.
You get scanned when you walk in the stage door.
Or something, but calling theaters or when they lie. I hate it when they lie. And it's we get to that moment. I'm like, I knew this moment was going to happen. Why did that happen?
That's right. At a certain point, I'm going to zip up that dress.
It's just there's no judgment. It's just a number, but just tell me the real one, because the fake one is just going to make for really sad fitting.
Oh, I think we know the clip we're going to send out from this episode.
Yeah.
No, maybe we shouldn't do that. That's great. Kate.
Something that could just do all the projector calculation placements for me, because that process it seems so simple to put 3 projectors on a set, and yet it takes days of going around and around and around, figuring out exactly where they need to go.
Yep. Kate, something you did during the pandemic that you otherwise would not have done?
I definitely would not have learned to make gluten-free sourdough bread. I have.
Another popular
every
answer.
week.
Chris.
I became a grandparent during COVID, which I think probably would not have happened if the pandemic hadn't going on. So yeah, that's
well, congratulations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
grandparent before 40.
That's awesome. I have spent more time with my partner this year than I have in the last 5 years of us being together. So that's been really nice. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yep. Nick.
I've made some ice cream from scratch. Never done that before. Fed my sweet tooth fully.
Did you do a machine or did you just do
I
it
got
in
a
the
machine and everything. Yeah.
Nice.
I did too, actually.
That's good.
Spent a lot of gardening and cooking around here.
I love the range of answers. I will say we've had a lot of repeat answers. No one's become a grandfather as far as I know during the pandemic. So you win. Drew became a parent. So,
Well, it was my second.
Ah, right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Cool.
All right. Well, that is the rapid fire. Thank you, everybody. Now let's kind of talk about what you've been up to lately. Anything that you have ignored that you're finally getting to or want to get to. Kate, you had mentioned you're cooking a lot of gluten-free sourdough bread.
That was never a goal.
Right.
To be
Any
clear.
new hobbies or anything that you've been doing, Kate?
Yeah, I started a company with two of my grad school colleagues. We are making digital videos, digital art. So doing a lot of music videos, hand animated and collage animated. And then we are trying to parlay into doing some installation work now that things are opening up again.
All right. Well, you got to plug it. What's the what's the
Yeah,
name
we're
of the
called
company?
Remarkable Squirrel Productions.
Ooh.
Awesome.
Yes, and we can fulfill all your digital art needs.
Oh, that's great. Christopher, how about you? You making a lot of baby clothes?
So I think right now, I think the exciting thing is being here in Vietnam. I'm here for work, doing a new outdoor nighttime spectacular called Once for Vin Pearl, this large theme park here. And it's just amazing to be in tech with people in person. I know a lot of us have done a lot of these Zoom or digital theater this past year, which I've enjoyed doing greatly. And I just finished my 5th production of those this year, designing. But it's really great to be here designing the show and to just do it in person. I feel so lucky and blessed to do it. And I'm lucky to be with the team that's here. It's going to be really great.
Awesome.
And everybody should come to Vietnam and see it.
All right.
I'm going to be in Korea soon, so maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can put it on Four Walls credit card. Jess, how about you?
Well, I learned I'm really terrible at self-motivation and existing without deadlines. So I have taken the last year to really just find peace and quiet moments, which is something I was not particularly good at before. I was always kind of seeking more input and seeking chaos, frankly. So I think that's I'm pretty over cooking. I admit I'm so bored with it. If I could just not for a while, that'd be great. But lots of biking and mostly just existing and being okay with just existing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick, how about you?
I have a 2-year-old toddler, so that he takes up a very large portion of my time and attention, which is absolutely wonderful. As others have mentioned, that for his first year, I was on the road for 6 months of it, a legit 50%. And now I've been here for his whole second year, and I've been around and part with him every day. But that does not leave a lot of room for personal hobbies during the pandemic.
Sure.
I will say. But a sleep by 10, that's a hobby that I never got to do. Never got to do that before.
I think it's going to be hard for all of us to get back into those, late. I mean, even though there's not going to be 10 out of 12s anymore, I assume we're still going to go past 10, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I will say we were, Jess and Chris and I were very late into the night on a union meeting. And I think around midnight, we all realized that that's usually, back in the day when we would punch out of work. And none of us could do it. I mean, it was horrible. And then we had 3 more hours. So
wow,
that's right. A Zoom meeting from 11 a.m. to 3:52 a.m.
Oh my God.
I know, but we did it.
Thank you.
Okay, racing. So not so much racing, but coming to the end. Christopher, let's start with you. What advice do you have for young people who want to do what you do?
Well, to be at this time in where we are in our history, and to be wanting to engage in this work, I'm like, God bless you. I mean, I really do. I think it's wonderful, and just jump in. Like, we need you. Your voice, your perspective is unique and needed in the world. And I'm here to welcome people who are getting started in their careers at this time, because I think I would bail, or a lot of people, for good reasons, are having to make tough decisions about their continued participation in the theater, and for people to be saying, hey, that's what I want to do. You're so brave. I give you so much credit.
Yeah, well said. Nick?
I think, as this pandemic has shown us, your skills with your eye and how light works on people, I would recommend folks be as broad as possible in thinking about where you can apply those skills. And across the entire entertainment industry, there's those skills and those techniques are unique to us in lighting, but Broadway is a very small portion of all the applicable places for those skills. So
Yeah,
that's my advice, to be broad.
yeah, great. Also great advice. Kate?
Yeah, the skills that you need for projection, as far as like digital content creation and 3D modeling and all that stuff, like, frankly, that stuff is very high in demand and better paid in most other industries. So if you want to apply it to theater, like, please come, we need you. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like, I started working for Peter Negrini because I emailed him to have coffee, and then he said, cool, I'm busy, email me in 5 months. And I did.
Yeah.
And then I went into that meeting super prepared and had a bunch of questions for him, and we chatted for 2 hours, and at the end of it he was like, yeah, let me know the next time you're free, we'll get you into the studio. So, like,
Yeah.
you can reach all the way to the top. Like, these people are accessible, and
Especially now. I mean, they're more accessible now. So if you're watching this and you want to do this, email everyone that you're looking at right now, and just email everyone.
Yeah.
And you know what? When they don't email you back, email them again, because it's not because they don't want to write you back. It's because your name is rolled off the screen. So keep at it, because,
and especially,
good.
sorry, I was going to say, especially email the people whose work you love.
Oh yeah, no, that's important. Say something nice about their work, our work, all of our work. No, it's the way in. I know it sounds so silly, but it is.
Yeah.
Just say something sort of smart and definitely nice. And keep at it. Don't stop. Pound the pavement. That's why it's called Pounding the Pavement. Jess?
Yeah, mine's a little bit more philosophical, but it's something I wish that I had come to understand a while back, is that it's okay to make mistakes. Just live with them. Don't let them consume you, because ultimately you learn more from your mistakes and failure than you will from any of your successes.
Well said. I think we've come to the end of our time.
Yes. Before we go, I did not get to some of these pictures.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nick.
Okay.
Am I the only one that's embarrassed?
No, we have Kate. It's
That's my hometown newspaper, friends.
Oh.
Hey, congratulations.
And
Small town.
Jess sent us this photo.
Oh, cool.
What show is that, Jess?
Dr. Sun Yat-sen at Santa Fe Opera.
Cool.
Well, I didn't want to not show those. I've done that before, and I feel bad afterwards.
I'm glad you did it. Anything anybody wants to add or clarify or retract before we leave? Your last chance to take it all back.
One more thing on that advice. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, sometimes you learn more from the bad managers than from the good managers. So, like, sometimes the worst people you've worked for are actually the people you will learn the most
most.
from, as far as like what not to do. Not saying you want to work for those people, don't ever work for them again, but like it shouldn't be a lost experience.
And Chris.
I was just gonna say, for people to check out the Costume Industry Coalition. This is like the group of makers and shops and vendors in New York City that are just struggling through this pandemic, like many of us are, and they're highlighting the costume industry, which, as we said in this call, a lot of people don't understand how it works, and they're really bringing a lot of attention to how we function and how we support the theater, live entertainment ecosystem in this country.
Thank you so much for saying that. It's a great last word. Drew, you're going to put a link up to our Light Humor episode 2.
Yep, it's up. So if you want to watch that now, you can, because we're going to end this show.
Too real.
So go watch it.
That one was too real.
Yeah.
No, it is.
I love focus, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Jess, Nick, Kate, Christopher, thank you, thank all 4 of you so much. Christopher, I can say I saw my first sunrise in Vietnam, so thank you for that.
Hey.
And don't leave. We're just going to wrap up the show, so just stick around for a quick 60 seconds. Everybody, thank you again. It was great. We will see you next Sunday for the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.